Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Richard Cruz, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is leading air craftsman Fred McNinney. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. And during this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you're able, I invite you all to please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting, 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operation for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
pay tribute to Corporal James Alan Murray. James Murray, known as Alan, was born on the 11th of April 1895, the second son of James and Fanny Murray of Adelaide. He attended Norwood State School before going on to the Adelaide School of Mines. He was awarded a first-class certificate and a gold medal for his lead work, and went on to undertake an apprenticeship as a plumber. He was a keen sportsman and a strong swimmer, and had reportedly saved people from drowning on at least 2 occasions. Alan Murray enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force in April 1915. As a 20-year-old apprentice, he had to obtain the permission of his parents and his employer before he could enlist. He was accepted for service with the 10th Battalion and underwent a period of training in Australia before leaving for active service overseas in September 1915. Private Murray first went to Egypt, where he continued training in the desert. At one point, he was swimming with some friends in the Suez Canal when someone got out of their depth and ran into trouble. Murray again came to the rescue, fishing him out before he could drown. Murray probably spent a very short period of time on Gallipoli before the evacuation, later returning to Egypt with the remainder of the 10th Battalion. In early 1916, the AIF underwent a period of expansion and reorganisation known as the doubling of the AIF. As part of this process, Alan Murray was transferred to the 50th Battalion. Arriving in France in June 1916, he and the 50th Battalion took part in the first major attack on the Western Front the following August, near the French village of Pozières. The battalion suffered heavy casualties in several attacks towards the fortified Mouquet farm, but Murray came through unscathed. He proved an able soldier, and shortly after the battalion was withdrawn, he was promoted to the rank of corporal. Corporal Murray spent the cold winter of 1916 to 1917 with his battalion, rotating in and out of the front line. He was in charge of a bombing team in D Company of the 50th Battalion and was known as the most reliable and bravest non-commissioned officer in the company. On the morning of the 2nd of April 1917, the 50th Battalion attacked the French village of Neyroy, a German outpost to the Hindenburg Line. They had been in the front line for several days already, and Murray had spent a considerable amount of time in no man's land each night, conducting reconnaissance and searching for wounded men. Murray's friend, Charles Litchfield, later described the impeding attack, saying, "Although we had been told it was a very easy job, we knew differently, and just before starting, all the section shook hands with each other." As the attack began, Corporal Murray led his section forward under heavy German fire. Litchfield was hit after a few hundred metres, but Murray continued on, leading his men until all had been killed or wounded. Despite being wounded himself, he continued to advance until he was killed outright by yet another enemy bullet. Charles Litchfield wrote to Murray's parents in Adelaide to say, "Alan was regarded by his officers as an absolutely trustworthy and cool NCO, and by us who were under his command. He was loved as a brother and a tried and true friend. I should like to say how proud you ought to be to have owned such a son as Alan." Although there were some reports of Alan Murray having been buried on the battlefield, his grave was never recovered. And today, he is commemorated on the Australian National Memorial at Villers-Bretonneux. He was 22 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Corporal James Alan Murray, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode, the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes this evening's last post ceremony. We thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.